I don't know how to explain this in a way that doesn't make me sound insane. My brother Dylan went missing 2 months ago. No trace, no leads, just gone. The last place he was seen was in front of that damn house at the end of Briarwood Lane. An old Victorian, rotting at the edges, windows black as empty eye sockets. Every kid in our town grew up scared of it. You don't trick or treat there. You don't cut through its yard. You don't even look at it too long. And yet, Dylan did. The police chalked it up to a runaway case, but I know my brother. He wouldn't leave Mom like that. He wouldn't leave me. So after weeks of dead ends, I went back to Briarwood Lane myself. I parked across the street, watching the house. I sat in the dead center of its lot, towering and silent. The kind of house that makes you feel noticed when you stand too close. That's when I saw him, the old man. He stood on the porch, hunched and thin, his skin hanging off his bones like an old suit 2 sizes too big. I don't know how long he'd been watching me, but when I met his eyes, he smiled, and then he waved. I should have left. Instead, I got out of my car and walked straight up to him. "Hey," I called, stepping at the base of the porch steps. "You live here?" The man grinned wider. His teeth were too white. "Lived here all my life." His voice had a slow, syrupy drawl, like he enjoyed rolling the words around in his mouth. I swallowed. "My brother went missing near this house a couple of months ago. Dylan Carter. Did you see anything that night?" "Oh, people go missing here all the time." A shiver ran down my spine. I took a step back. "What do you mean?" The man's smile flickered. He tilted his head slightly, the way a dog does when it's thinking. In a voice almost too soft to hear, he said, "The house gets hungry." He turned and walked inside, shutting the door behind him. I should have just left. But that night, I came back. I didn't know what I expected. A sign? A clue? Maybe just confirmation that the old man was crazy. But as I sat parked down the street, staring at the house through my windshield, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The old man, he was standing on the porch again. But he wasn't alone. A woman, maybe early 30s, blonde, shaking, stood next to him. She kept glancing around, as if making sure no one was watching. The man whispered something in her ear. Then slowly, he opened the front door. The woman hesitated. She looked afraid. After a long moment, she stepped inside, and the old man followed. The door shut behind them. I waited 5 minutes, 10, then 15, and then the door creaked open again. The old man stepped back onto the porch, alone. He exhaled, stretching his arms like a man satisfied after a big meal. He turned, locked the door, and disappeared inside. That woman never came out. I barely slept that night. I saw that woman stepping into the house. The way the old man shut the door behind her, like it was swallowing her whole. I had to know what happened to her. I had to know what happened to Dylan. So, the next morning, just after sunrise, I went back. The porch creaked beneath my weight as I climbed the steps. Up close, the house smelled wrong, stale, like meat left out too long. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to knock. No answer. I knocked again, harder. "Hey, I know you're in there!" I reached for the doorknob, heart hammering. To my surprise, it turned easily in my hand. It wasn't even locked. The house was letting me in. I hesitated. Every nerve in my body was screaming to run. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The second I stepped inside, the air changed. The house was silent. Not just quiet, silent. No outside noise, no hum of electricity. Even my own footsteps felt swallowed by the stillness. I stood in a long hallway. The floorboards sagged under an ancient rug, and the walls were lined with faded wallpaper, peeling at the edges like dead skin. A heavy chandelier hung overhead, though no light came from it. Somewhere deeper in the house, a floorboard creaked. I froze. "Hello?" My voice barely carried. "Is anyone there?" No answer. I turned to leave, but the door was gone. Not closed, not locked, just gone. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. I had just walked through that door. I felt that knob in my hand. But now, there was nothing but an endless stretch of hallway behind me. The house had swallowed the exit. I was inside, and it wasn't letting me go. I took a slow breath, trying to push down the panic rising in my chest. Think. If the front door was gone, maybe I could find another way out. A window, a back door, anything. I turned toward the hallway ahead. The deeper I walked, the longer it seemed to stretch. Doors lined the walls on either side, but when I reached for their handles, they wouldn't budge. Every few steps, I swore the wallpaper shifted, like something behind it was moving, watching. I saw the picture frames, black and white portraits of people, rows of them, all different, young, old, men, women, each one frozen in time with hollow, empty stares. My stomach twisted. Something about them felt off. I looked closer, and my blood ran cold. Dylan. A photograph of my brother hung among them. Same messy brown hair, same slight smirk. His face was paler than I remembered, his eyes too wide, and under his picture, in faded gold letters, Dylan Carter, Fed, 2023. Fed? The house hadn't just taken him. It had eaten him. I heard a breath behind me, my heart slamming against my ribs. The old man stood at the end of the hallway. "You shouldn't be here," he said, my hands clenched into fists. "Where's my brother?" He sighed. "You already know, don't you?" His voice was slow, deliberate. "You saw the picture?" Rage burned through me. I stormed toward him. "What did you do to him?" He didn't move. "I didn't do anything. The house did." My fist trembled. "Why?" "Because it gets hungry." His lips curled into that awful smile. "And someone has to feed it." A sickening realization settled in my gut. "You lure people here." My voice barely came out. "You give it people." His smile widened. "I have to." I took a step back. "You're insane!" His head tilted. "I keep the town safe. If I don't feed it, it'll take whoever it wants. Would you rather it be children?" Bile rose in my throat. "That woman last night," I choked out. "You fed her to it." He didn't deny it. "You've been doing this for years, haven't you?" I said. His expression didn't change. He sighed, stepping toward me. "You weren't supposed to come in here, kid." I backed away. His voice dropped to a whisper. "But since you did," he reached into his pocket, "you're staying." The walls groaned. The house moved. The air grew thick, heavy, like something was pressing in from all sides. The wallpaper rippled, bulging outward as if something was pushing through from the other side. The faces in the picture frames blinked. My breath hitched. One by one, the mouths of the portraits twisted open, not wide, but impossibly wide, stretching, contorting, like silent screams trapped behind glass. The house was waking up, and it was starving. The floor beneath me shuddered. The rug curled, pulling away from the wood. The old man just stood there, watching. The walls split open. A gaping, fleshy mouth tore through the wallpaper, lined with jagged, rotting teeth. The air filled with the stench of decay. A deep, gurgling growl rumbled from inside the walls. The house wasn't just alive. It was a beast, and I was standing in its throat. I bolted. The hallway shifted beneath me, stretching, warping, the doors on either side melting into the walls. The mouth behind me expanded, the teeth grinding against each other with a sound like splitting bone. "Don't fight it," the old man called after me. "It'll only make it worse." I ran faster. The air thickened, turning into something wet. My shoes splashed against the floor. It wasn't wood anymore. It was flesh. I was inside its stomach. The walls squeezed in. The teeth slammed shut behind me, cutting off the hallway. Then, a door. A single door at the end of the hallway. It was open. I sprinted, lungs burning, my legs sinking with every step. I dove through the doorway just as the walls collapsed in. The second I hit the floor, I heard it. A furious, guttural scream. The house was angry, but I wasn't safe yet, because as I scrambled to my feet, gasping for breath, I realized something. I wasn't outside. I was standing in a different room. The house had let me go, but it wasn't done playing yet. And the old man, he was nowhere to be seen. The walls breathed. I stood in the middle of a dimly lit room, my chest heaving, sweat dripping down my back. The air smelled sour, like rotting fruit in the sun. The wallpaper pulsed, the ceiling flexed, and the wooden floor beneath me thumped in a slow, rhythmic beat. A heartbeat. The house was alive, and I was still inside it. I turned, scanning for an exit. No windows, just one door behind me, the same one I had just ran through. I reached for the knob. It wouldn't turn. I yanked harder. Locked. A low, wet gurgle rolled through the walls. Something inside the house was laughing. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway outside. I backed away just as the door handle twisted. The door swung open. The old man stepped inside, but something was wrong. His face had changed. His skin sagged more than before. His eyes sunken deep into his skull. His fingers stretched too long, the bones pressing against the paper-thin skin. His clothes hung off him like a shed cocoon. He grinned, but his teeth weren't human anymore. They were sharp and jagged, like the house's. "You made it far," he said, voice thick like something slithering through tar. "Most don't." I stumbled back. "Let me out!" He chuckled. "I told you, the house is hungry." I gritted my teeth. "Then why am I still alive?" His grin widened. "Because it's playing with its food." I glanced around for anything I could use to fight back. My eyes landed on a rusted fireplace poker leaning against the wall. I lunged for it. The old man moved fast, too fast. He grabbed my wrist with clawed fingers, yanking me forward. I gritted my teeth. "I am not your next meal!" I drove my knee into his ribs. Something inside him crunched. He staggered back with a wheezing shriek, his body twisting, writhing, unraveling. His skin split at the seams, peeling away like wet paper. Beneath it, his real form slithered free, a hollowed-out husk of a man, skin hanging loose like fabric. His insides black and pulsing with the house's hunger. His jaw unhinged, stretching wider, wider. I didn't wait. I grabbed the fireplace poker and swung. The metal connected with his skull, splitting it open like an overripe fruit. The old man collapsed. His body melted into the floor, sinking into the house like flesh absorbing a wound. And then the house screamed. The walls convulsed. The floor buckled. The wallpaper peeled back, revealing wet, writhing muscle underneath. The hallway twisted, stretching impossibly long. The doors on either side gaping open like mouths. Hands, human hands, clawed from the walls, grasping, reaching, their fingers bone-thin and desperate. I dodged them, heart hammering. I saw it. A door at the end of the hall. It was open. Light poured through. The exit. The house roared, a deep, inhuman wail rattling my skull. The floor split open behind me, revealing a black, endless pit lined with teeth. I sprinted. The hallway collapsed. I dove through the door, and everything went black. I woke up to the sound of birds. My eyes snapped open. I was outside, lying on the grass. The house loomed in front of me, quiet and still, just like before. The front door was closed. I gasped, sitting up, chest heaving. My body ached, my hands scraped and bleeding. But I was alive. I made it out. Then, I noticed something. The porch. Someone was standing there. A person. Tall. Motionless. Watching me. My stomach dropped. Because I knew that silhouette. I'd seen it before. Every time I looked in the mirror, it was me. I stood there on the porch. My own face. My own body. But his eyes weren't mine. They were empty. He smiled. In a voice that wasn't mine, he said, "The house still needs a keeper."